Donald Trump. For decades, that name has been synonymous with wealth, power, and controversy. He's a figure that's been a constant source of fascination and debate.
So the big question is, how did it all happen? To really understand the fortune, you have to go back to the beginning. And surprisingly, the story of the Trump empire doesn't start in some glitzy Manhattan high-rise. It starts in the outer boroughs of New York City. And it all begins with his father, Fred Trump.
Now, Fred Trump, he was an absolute master of his domain. He built a real estate empire brick by brick, putting up thousands of homes for middle-class families in Brooklyn and Queens. So this is the world Donald grew up in, a world of blueprints, construction sites, and the art of the deal being practiced every single day.
And this comparison right here is key. Fred's world was all about steady, reliable growth. But Donald? His ambition looked across the river to the glittering, high-stakes world of Manhattan. See, he wasn't interested in just building houses. He wanted to build towering symbols of power and wealth.
So, the 1970s. This was the turning point. Donald Trump takes the reins of the family business, and using his father's foundation, he sets his sights squarely on conquering that Manhattan skyline.
His first major breakthrough was in the 70s, turning the old, run-down Commodore Hotel into the brand-new Grand Hyatt. It was a super complex deal, but it proved he could play in the big leagues. Then, in the 80s, came his masterpiece, Trump Tower. And after that, an aggressive, debt-fueled expansion into the casino world of Atlantic City.
You have to understand, Trump Tower wasn't just a building, it was a brand statement. Everything about it, from its over-the-top design to its celebrity tenants, was engineered to scream luxury, cementing the Trump name as a synonym for success.
But here's the catch. This rapid expansion was built on a mountain of debt and immense risk. For every spectacular win, there was a high-stakes gamble that could bring the whole thing crashing down. And in the early 1990s, well, it almost did.
This brings us to probably the most critical turning point in his career, a moment where the entire empire was facing total collapse.
By the early 90s, the dream was turning into a nightmare. Trump was billions of dollars in debt, both personally and for his companies. The booming 80s real estate market had gone bust, and his flashy casinos in Atlantic City were just hemorrhaging money.
Things looked bleak. I mean, the media, the banks, his rivals, so many people believed this was it. This was the end of the road. The brand that was built on the image of success was now facing a very public, very humiliating failure. His survival came down to two things. First, he was relentless in negotiating with banks to restructure all that crippling debt. But even more importantly, he started to leverage his most unique asset, the famous and infamous public persona he'd spent years building. This period of near collapse actually forced a major strategic pivot, and it revealed what had secretly become his most valuable commodity all along.
It wasn't a building, it wasn't a casino, so what was it? What was the secret weapon that allowed him to not only survive, but to stage one of the biggest comebacks in business history?
It was the brand. The name Trump itself had become an asset more powerful and more flexible than any piece of property he owned, and he was about to cash in on it in a way nobody had ever seen before.
And you know what the catalyst was? It wasn't another real estate deal. It was a reality TV show. The Apprentice beamed this image of Trump as the ultimate tough-as-nails CEO into millions of living rooms week after week. It turned him from a New York developer into a global celebrity, and it made the Trump brand a household name.
And this is where the new business model really came together. He used that global fame to license his name. Developers all over the world would pay millions just to put the Trump brand on their buildings because it gave them an instant feeling of luxury. For him, it meant collecting massive fees with almost none of the financial risk of actually building something.
So in the end, his fortune became this complex hybrid, one part old-school real estate and one part modern, media-driven branding.
So when you look at the Trump fortune today, it really rests on all of these pillars. Yeah, it started with the tangible stuff, the real estate and casinos, but it was his television fame that acted like a supercharger, allowing him to create these incredibly lucrative brand deals and licensing contracts across the globe.
Of course, this journey was never a smooth ride. His career has been marked by high-profile bankruptcies, a whole lot of lawsuits, and just constant, intense scrutiny from the public and the press.
And all of that has led to two dominant and completely conflicting narratives. His critics will argue that his wealth was often exaggerated for show, while his supporters say he was just a master negotiator who knew exactly how to work the financial and legal systems to his benefit.
But look, regardless of what you believe about the exact numbers or the methods, one fact is just undeniable. The Trump brand itself grew to become his single most powerful and valuable creation, an entity that was way bigger and more influential than any one building or company he owned.
And that leaves us with a fundamental question, really, about what wealth even means today. In the end, what truly built the Trump empire? Was it the concrete and steel of his buildings, or was it the invisible but immense power of his name?
Thank you for watching. If you found this deep dive interesting, do us a favor and like, share, and subscribe for more explainers on the figures and forces that shape our world.